Hello, good afternoon and good morning. Welcome to our OSTHUS webinar on demystifying semantics. My name is Natasha Castro, and I'm a senior business consultant here at OSTHUS. For today, I'll be your moderator. It gives me great pleasure to have with me in this webinar Dr. Eric Lidl, our VP Data Science, joining us from the US, and Dr. Heiner Oberkampf, one of our senior semantic engineers, sitting here next to me in Aachen. A few short words on OSTHUS. We bring together experts in data science and lab informatics. We're located in Germany, the US, and in China, and our motto is to connect data, people, and organizations. And before I hand over to our speakers, I would like to go over the functionality of the webinar tool with you. On the left side, you will see the comment section where you can enter your comments, questions, or if you experience any difficulties you experience. These are only visible to the speakers and to me, and if you experience problems, I will try to solve them for you. On the top bar, you also see an interact button where you can give feedback concerning the speed of the webinar if you want Eric or Heiner to slow down or speed up, and I will tell them to. The webinar will be recorded, and we'll make it available through our social media channels afterwards. So Eric, it's now you.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Okay, excellent. So I'll start a little bit off here, just introducing OSTHUS and how we approach technology. We see ourselves as connecting data, people, and organizations. And in doing so, we see integration happening at many levels. So it's not only about connecting data from machine to machine, it's really about helping to get people's concepts out of their heads and into systems so that the machines can have a model that allows them to interact more freely, but it also allows people to use technology to share information with each other more easily. And it should cut across organizations to allow different laboratories within an organization to work together, or to bring together the scientists with the business people, or to bring business people from different organizations together, or scientists from different organizations together, and so on. So we see this integration at lots of different levels. And so for us, technology development pertains to a lot more than just the zeros and the ones. So in doing so, we see that the move to smart data is really important here. And smart data can be added to existing systems, meaning this doesn't require a replacement of your existing technology. So it's not that you have to get out of the world of relational databases or throw away what you have. Instead, you utilize your data and you utilize the information in your organizations in a better way. So smart data really provides a separation of the model layer from the data layer. And in doing so, what this means is the model layer now contains your concepts, your relationships, the context of what your data is about. And the data layer underneath holds all of the raw data that is simply connected via the model layer. So now when I want to build new kinds of queries, or if I want to search for new kinds of information or draw links across my organization, I should interact more with the model layer and be connecting that model layer to my data layer in new and interesting ways. And that can be done through mapping or whatever. But basically, you leave data in place, and the smart data links the information from that data to the models themselves. So in doing so, ultimately the goal here is to drive business value. It's not to make technology for the sake of technology. So when you understand what your business drivers are for your organization, this type of technology should help you capture them and should help determine the value of a given solution. So when you are thinking about how do I merge my data together more easily, how do I develop better ways of searching through the data, how do I develop better communication strategies, how do I build these different kinds of models, the semantic technology that we're going to describe here should really give you some clear-cut benefits. So I have a list of some of them here. So one thing is that integrated data is more valuable than fragmented data. So if your data is brought together, you can have a single point of query, and you can query across multiple data sources with lots of different kinds of data in from one place in your landscape. And understanding your data makes it easier to search and share the results. So not only can you go find the data, but you can pull it back in ways that allow you to share it with more people, because perhaps you've pulled together two data sources, biology on one side, chemistry on the other side. You brought this together. You can now use that data pattern to start a dialogue across those two groups, which up to this point may not be sharing their data as frequently. Important patterns in your data then can be used to drive new kinds of analytics. So you may find new relationships. You may find connections between things that you were unaware of before, and this will allow you to build new kinds of analysis tools or rules on top of them to find even more information. Private data can now be linked to public sources, and this is because of the commonality of the underlying languages that get used in semantic technologies. So there are many open source ontologies and models out there that you can import or map to, and you can utilize that data now inside of your own company to make more sense of what it is you're trying to do. And improved context makes your data more meaningful over time. So oftentimes people hold on to their data for decades at a time, but after several years, a lot of people forget what that data was about. What was the context it was even created for? What was going on when we ran that experiment, or where did the sample study come from, or what were the parameters that were being utilized at that time? And losing that context can make your data over time become less and less valuable. Retaining that context, we would argue, makes it retain its value over time. So the use cases we see then for semantics are that our current customers basically use it for the following kinds of applications. We do a lot of data integration projects where we bring together these disparate data sources and databases. We build taxonomies, which allow us to structure people's information in a way that you can now subclass and superclass your data and have nice controlled vocabularies and common terms. We do work in linked data, bringing in open source areas and open source models into people's companies so that they can utilize a lot of the work that's been done by other experts. We build analytics systems that allow for pattern recognition, alerting, new kinds of querying, and so on. We build reference master data to allow people to have these kinds of common vocabularies and common thesauri across their organizations, so that now when you do these linkages, you can find the right terms where information connects. And we also do a lot of work then in the long-term storage by maintaining that context so that the value of the data is there over time. Natasha, I'll turn it back over to you now.
Okay, thanks, Eric. So now it's time for our first poll. So we would like to ask you the question is, how prepared do you feel your organization is for adapting semantic technologies? So your options are not at all, trying it out, all set, or unsure. So I'll give you a moment to vote. Okay. So, Heiner, I think most people are trying it out right now. So what do we see with our customers?
Yeah, with our customers, we exactly see this picture because we have many proof of concept applications with different customers in different areas, so in pharmaceutical or in R&D, in regulatory and so on, and all of them are doing proof of concept implementations with us at the moment, but some of them are going already also for more enterprise-ready systems and trying to really roll this out in the enterprise at a certain level. And next, I would like to go over the spectrum of semantic knowledge organization systems that are used to store reference master data. So here you go from lists, from really weak semantic models, to ontologies, which are really expressive models. And there are many different types of models in between simple lists and ontologies. And after my part of the presentation, you will have an understanding of the different models in between, so from informal hierarchies, thesauri, taxonomies, conceptual models, and ontologies, because I'll show you examples for these and explain why it is important to distinguish between them and what are the purpose of these different models. Because it's not that ontology is good and list is bad. It really depends on your application scenario and the questions that you want to answer with these systems. So go to the next. So starting with the lists, everybody knows lists. Here's an example of airport codes where you see the codes and the names of the different airports. And as you see, lists are very easy to use. Everybody uses lists to define a set of terms that you want to use to reference a certain type of entity. And here, for example, you see that in some cases the code correspond with or at least point to the different names. So Atlanta could be seen in the code, but sometimes it's not the case. So, for example, in the George Bush International Airport, you don't see this in the code. What is also missing in a list is the context of the location. So, for example, it's difficult to see, if you don't know it, that John F. Kennedy and LaGuardia are airports of New York. And so the context is often missing in lists. And on the other hand, lists, if they get long, they are also difficult to search through. So the next obvious step after lists is to organize the data by informal hierarchy. So everybody knows this from his own laptop when you order your data in different folders. And this is also a typical case in the regulatory domain where, for example, submission of documents to a authority needs to follow a certain document structure and where different data is provided to the authority. What you see here in this hierarchy is that the elements in that hierarchy do not follow any semantic relationships. So you see that test methods, animals, or forms of exposure are mixed. And this is, on the one hand, a strength of an informal hierarchy. You can group things as you want, but on the other hand, it's a limitation because it's usable only within a specific use case with a specific purpose. Yeah. So you have a limited applicability of that model. So next we have thesauri, and there you talk mainly about different terms and talk about broader and narrower terms. You introduce the concept of synonyms. So, for example, for ibuprofen, you have the different synonyms shown on the right side, and you show the different relationships between the terms. So, for example, painkiller is related to pain, but, for example, you don't make explicit what the semantic relation is between painkiller and pain. What you also have is an expression of the different languages. So, for example, a German language may be attached to the element of painkiller. And so thesauri are very strong in a sense that they capture all the linguistic information, and that's why the most important application for these thesauri is search. So imagine that you want to search your repository of documents or research reports or clinical reports about painkillers, then you want to implicitly return information about ibuprofen or the other elements shown below painkiller. Next come taxonomy, and there's a crucial gap between, or crucial step between thesaurus and taxonomies. So taxonomies provide a formal generalization, specialization hierarchy. So you talk about real subclass relationships or formal is-a relationships. And this allows you inference along the class hierarchy. A typical example of taxonomies is the International Classification of Diseases. And the purpose of the International Classification of Diseases initially was analysis of mortality data. And there you see that you need to be able to classify diagnosis information, to group things, to group death causes, and to provide statistics on them. And there you really need a subclass hierarchy that you can say, for example, if I want to count all asthma diagnosis, then I need to count all the different subtypes of asthma. And you see that, and you can also group on a higher level. You can say, okay, give me all diseases of the respiratory system. And so here you have this inference mechanism, and a question you can answer to evaluate whether you have a subclass relationship is a subclass or all instances of a subclass are also instances of the superclass. And next, I want to give you a short quiz on what kind of model you see here. So these are terms from MESH, and you can examine the relationships from thumb to its more broader, or to the super concepts, and check whether these are really subclass relationships or whether these are more thesaurus-like relationships. And just examine how thumb is shown here with the other concepts, and figure out for yourself whether this is a taxonomy or whether this is a thesaurus. So I give you 5 minutes to think. 5 seconds. Sorry. So hopefully everybody has up his mind on whether this is a taxonomy or thesaurus. And the answer is that MESH is a thesaurus. And if you look at these relationships, you can see that thumb is a subclass of finger, or you can say that it's a subclass of finger. On the other hand, fingers are part of the hand. They are not a subclass of the hand. And MESH knows about this, and they know that they are thesaurus, and they explicitly point this out by saying that that the links in the MESH hierarchy are not subclass relations. And if you interpret them as such, you get strange inferences such as every thumb is a hand. Yeah? And this is just misusing a thesaurus as a taxonomy, which would give you these incorrect results. So it's important to know that these are not subclass relationships. But on the other hand, MESH is a widely used model to enhance search applications. And it is almost used at every client for different indexing of documents and so on. So from taxonomies, we move on to more expressive models, to conceptual models, and there we introduce a formal distinction between classes and instances, and we have a formal relation instance of. So we don't say just is a, but we say, okay, instance of. And you see that then, for example, you have an instance of person, or you have an instance of Motrin, and you can say then on the instance level, okay, John takes a certain instance of Motrin, and commonly you have a very thin model layer and a lot of instance data. So the massive data is in the instances. And then finally we have ontologies, and the addition to conceptual models is that you now are able to provide logical definitions of the classes. So you can, for example, define that a painkiller drug treats some pain, and that's then the definition of that drug. And on the other hand, you can say that certain classes are disjoint, that is, that there cannot be instances of both classes, or that products have exactly one barcode, and all these things can be said. And what this is useful for is that you can classify automatically instances and that you can check your model regarding consistency. And this is really an important step during your modeling, that you turn on the reasoner and get, for example, inconsistencies in your modeling. And so this helps you in developing your model. And another example is shown below. This is a logical definition of the class hepatitis, which is here defined as the intersection of two classes, of the class infection and the class of things that have location from liver. And to illustrate the power of these logical definitions, consider that you have two sources of information. For example, you have a report from a lab that a certain specimen contained an infection. And on the other hand, you have a report that tells you that this specimen was taken from the liver. And so if you put these two facts in an ontology where hepatitis is defined as shown there, then this clinical finding is automatically classified as hepatitis, and this gives you, makes the implicit information from two facts explicit, even though nobody stated anything about hepatitis. This shows really the value of ontologies in classifying things. So hopefully the examples showed or made these differences clear and why they are important. And I just want to note that all of these models can be defined using a accepted technology stack and accepted standards from the World Wide Web Consortium, which defines standardized also HTML, and standardized URIs, XMLs for hierarchical models, then RDF for more graph-like models, RDFS for the subclasses, and OWL for ontologies, and SPARQL, you see there on the left, is the query language for all these models. And its standards make your life easier in the sense that if you adhere to them, then you can more easily combine different models that are defined by different groups. So this is really a driver of reuse. As I said, everything in these models is specified in form of triples. So all these triples are subject, predicate, object assertions. And a set of triples is called an RDF graph. And these graphs are stored in triple stores. And basically, these are very simple systems to store triples. And the query language is called SPARQL. It's similar to SQL, but it's a lot better suited for graph-like queries. So what you do with a SPARQL query is that you define a graph pattern, and then you retrieve a set of matching objects, matching entities, and then you can decide whether you want to get the result as a table, so you select certain entities, or you want to get a graph as a result that you want to process then further. And what we see, and this is often an important step in a customer project, is that which triple store should be used for our enterprise system. And we see that many of these triple stores have the common basic functionality, but the performance can have really different variances. And so tuning of the corresponding DBs is necessary. And another aspect is that some of them better integrate with other storage systems. So, for example, with relational databases or document stores or XML stores or file systems and so on. And some of them can run analytics and provide you with certain libraries for this and are more expressive on this analytical side. So we commonly distinguish with our customers these type of triple store implementations. The first are relational plus RDF stores. There you also have, for example, the Oracle Spatial and Graph database. Then you have document stores that are enhanced with RDF. MarkLogic and DataNova are good examples for this. So this is good if you have a large document set that you want, where you want your metadata be captured in RDF in a semantic model and then search them. Then you have GraphDBs with RDF, and there you have more the reasoning aspect, so it's better suited to deal with ontologies. Sometimes it's good to choose for initial POC evaluations open source RDF stores like Apache Jena, Sesame or Forstore. And then if you want to go more into the analytics domain where you want to, for example, use uncertainty on relationships and so on, then classical graph databases might be the appropriate choice. So Neo4j is an example for this.
So thank you, Heiner. That brings us to our second and last poll. So I'll bring it up. Now that Heiner and Eric have discussed the semantics a bit, do you see potential applications of it in your organization? And well, your votes are tons of applications, quite a lot, only a few, 0 applications, or I don't know. I still need to know more. I'll give you a few seconds to vote. So, Heiner, I think it's a or Eric, sorry. It's a draw between quite a lot, and I don't know. I need to learn more. So I know that for the next slides you have some industry use cases coming up. So maybe you can, hopefully you can give the audience some inspiration.
Hopefully. So, okay. Well, what we would like to talk about now is, after you think about the kinds of modeling you would like to perform and where you would like to be on the semantic spectrum, as Heiner walked through, and then if you think about, okay, well, given that, the kind of databases or the types of queries or the type of information I would like to retrieve from these systems, you're now left with another set of questions, perhaps, which is, how do I integrate this into my larger ecosystem? Now, most of our customers are large institutions who already contain a significant amount of data and a lot of legacy systems. So again, going back to one of our initial themes, this is not about throwing out what you have. This is more about augmenting what you have. So what this slide here represents is, in a real enterprise application, your semantic information, as you can see in the top left corner, is only one component in your overall ecosystem. So if we start on the left and move clockwise around the diagram, you'll see that there are unstructured documents that you may have in your organization. These can be anything from PubMed articles to reports to your regulatory submissions, what have you. Those are going to need to be integrated through a different type of technology, an entity extraction, text extractor, natural language processing, something like this. Moving on, then you see the semantic databases that, if you decide to go with ontologies or some type of a graph representation of your metadata, you'll then have to decide on some type of technology there to store that semantic information. Moving across the diagram, you'll see that there will be some kind of dashboards or reports. You'll want to visualize your information in some way to make it really easy for your users to access this information. You're going to, of course, have structured data. Relational databases are not going anywhere in the near term. But now there are new kinds of databases moving to the bottom side of the diagram, and you'll see that there are now these cloud databases, or you may hear people talking about NoSQL or NoSQL. And these are a new kind of database that have a new kind of structure. They're high scale, they're cloud deployed, and so on. And then the last box you see there is most people want to start to utilize their data in some type of an analytics system. So, and if we look at this kind of enterprise type of application set, you'll see that this is a very hybrid kind of architecture. You have a lot of different technologies that are going to do a lot of different things. They're going to hold different kinds of information. And the key is that you need this integration layer in the middle to bring this all together. And semantics does not solve the problem entirely. As I said, to go from unstructured documents, you're going to need some kind of text extraction or NLP processing. And of course, to go from structured databases, you're going to need some kind of a mapping strategy, and you're going to still need to maintain and be able to query against that structured data. But by having a nice integration layer, what the semantic system does do for you is it helps you to at least define the terms, define the relationships. And one of the key elements is that we use a lot of URIs, meaning that the universal resource indicators tell us where the data is located. And it tells us not only what it is, but it tells us how to find it inside of the system. So if we look now at some actual industry use cases, I'd like to cover 3 areas that we see as important for people to apply this technology. And hopefully this can generate some more question and discussion at the end. So I'd like to leave a little bit of time after this to field some questions from the attendees. So one of the areas we work in quite a bit is in R&D applications. So in R&D, one of the key elements here is that people are oftentimes looking for new information. They're looking to integrate the knowledge you have with new and evolving knowledge in the world. So there are a lot of new kinds of reports. There are a lot of new kinds of scientific papers and discoveries coming out all the time. And semantics can really be used to effectively integrate those things against your existing data sources. So mappings can be created, for example, between the semantic models and other kinds of data sources you may have. So if you can imagine in an R&D application, having the ability to pull lots of databases together into a common model and then link that model out to something like the gene ontology that you see in the top right corner, or in the bottom right corner you see KEBI, a chemistry-based ontology. What you have here is you have the capability now to really map across lots of different areas. And the mappings between these different data sources really show us the ability to search. So if you think about information connected in a graph, I can drive from concept to concept to concept. I can actually follow a pattern of thought or a line of reasoning through that, and if I capture that, and I can actually make that pattern of driving through the graph something savable, which there are tools that do this, now I have the ability to not only go from point A to point B in my model, but I can save how I got there, and I can share it with other people. So it offers really an effective amount of linkage to the external world. And again, that's because of when Heiner showed the stack, we have a lot of common standards that we can use for these types of vocabularies. So a lot of our customers are seeing benefits by exploiting these external data points. Another key element here in the R&D applications that we work in is we work down at the instrument level of laboratories. So we actually look at how the instrumentation can come together and how we can take those kinds of studies now directly out of the lab and start to link them to other areas of the organization. So perhaps you want to go all the way from clinical, which is far downstream, back upstream and look at what were some of the lab results initially with a compound that led you to think it was effective, and then how did that actually play out in the clinical trials? And many of us know this as the push towards a type of, translational medicine from bedside back to the bench. And this step in R&D and integrating the data together meaningfully can be a good first step to being able to do that. So you can draw these connections in the R&D world, give people the ability to drive around new information, link external sources, link the basic laboratory information that's there in the instruments, and then connect out to more and more things as you go. So this is something that when we see these kinds of applications, we normally tell our customers to start small, start with a focused problem, and build off of that into other areas. Another area that we've had success in the past working on, and in fact you can probably find several semantic applications to this, is in manufacturing. So machine lines, like you see up at the top right corner there, depending whatever you're making, could be tablets, or it could be some kind of mixtures, or it could be a medical device or whatever. These machine lines produce very large data sets. Oftentimes these machines are running, and in real time there is a ton of information pouring off of several sections of that machine and being databased right there on the floor. And so if you're looking at this data, right, as it's flowing out of the machine, as the machine is running, you can see that there are several areas to apply semantics to that can be quite powerful. One is in the materials. So there are raw goods coming in, okay, and you can look at where did they come from. If you perhaps have vendors that you're buying those raw goods from, you can look at how much is coming in, what type, and so on. You can have mixing instructions. So sometimes you're making monomers into polymers or something like this, and those things can be mixed on-site or off-site, and you can have that information. You can look at batch quality results and so on. And so what this allows you to do is, using the semantics, you can build very nice materials analysis reports coming off your machine, and you can actually use these down the road. You can also look at the process. So the process is really the transformation of the product from one state to another. So inside these machines, oftentimes you have temperature settings, you have coding of tablets or coding of certain objects inside of the machine. You can have packaging and so on. And the process that these things go through, the time it takes, the settings of the machinery, and actually what's happening. Are bulbs that are used perhaps to use light to cure something, are they strong enough and doing a good enough job right now? These types of items between materials and process can actually help us to look at near real-time trending in the machine using the graphs. And so what you've really done in the third bullet is you can move QA and QC to a near real-time kind of activity, as opposed to being done after the good is created. You can have integration with different data sources. So in this sense, you can have different machines on a line, or you can have various lines inside of a manufacturing facility connected via the data, via the graph. And what this allows you to do is you can know everything about the product when it's finished. So in the past, working on these, you could pick up an item at the end, and I could say, I know exactly which lane this went through, I know exactly which nozzles touched it, I know which machine it went through, I know which set of bulbs helped cure it, and so on. The next thing is that machines are now becoming more self-aware and communicative. So as we move to higher types of sensor systems and the Internet of Things, we're going to see an increasingly set of demands for these kinds of machines to actually do something with that data that they're transmitting about themselves. And so another a key area where semantics has been proven effective in the past is to look at how you can therefore help with the yield versus defect problem. So can you ramp things up to make more of a product while maintaining its quality, or are there ways to actually engineer out certain kinds of defects? So this can help by trending good versus bad products using the classifications as named graphs. So you can have classifications that actually have groupings like extremely low, low, medium, high, extremely high, and you can look at where these readings coming off the machines, how they're being classified and bucketed, so you can start to tell if something is trending towards the temperature is getting too high, that could affect the product's actual state or performance. And then they can be linked to other kinds of heuristics, and this is where you get into mathematical data science and trending over time. And the last thing we can look at here is in areas like regulatory affairs. So in regulatory affairs, we see that people have a lot of unstructured data, and they'd like to combine it with some of their structured data. So documents now can be linked to your internal databases. Document information can be extracted, and the entity extraction and the tagging techniques get put into the semantic modeling, and if structured appropriately, now you can have a very nice classification of different terms coming out of there. You can have study results that were submitted. You can have information on who the submitting authors are, what the company is, which country they submitted this to, and where it's located in. You can look at the legal entities, okay, and the countries that these submissions go to. So in the past, doing some of this work in regulatory, we were able to show that different rules can exist for different countries, and there are different schedules that exist for different countries. And so instead of mapping and monitoring that across spreadsheets and making this a person's job, you can have the ontology preemptively know when things are due to be submitted or resubmitted in Japan versus Peru or something like this. And then as the laws change over time, if you get information that a new law could change and maybe some kind of a compound is no longer going to be permitted in a country, this could send an alert or some type of automated response in the ontology system to inform you that perhaps you should be looking at alternatives so you don't have to remove your product completely from a market. And this can require a kind of constant monitoring. Another thing you can look at in regulatory are the structures around patents and the information in there. And these can be found to possess significant business value for a lot of our customers. And then the analytics for the patterns of interest, these things can be used internally or to monitor competitors in the market. So you can actually look at the analytics on how long certain submissions take your company to produce, how long do they take your competitors to produce. You can look at things like customer analysis. So you can look at things like sentiment. What are people saying out there about our products? How are things trending? Which markets, which areas do we see where we're doing well, and which areas do we see we need improvement? So these are three specific and kind of different areas within the life sciences space that we actively work in and that we've had some success applying semantics to over time. So I would now like to basically turn it back over to Natasha, who I believe is going to open up the question and answer session. Thanks.
Yes, Eric, thank you. And we already have a couple of questions from our audience. So just a quick reminder, if you have a question, please use our comment section. So let me start by the first question. I don't know, maybe this is for Heiner. So Heiner, can you explain how the semantic model is different from the metadata model?
Yeah, so actually semantics is about getting your metadata right. So making the meaning of the metadata explicit, you get more precise metadata on your information, so on your documents or on your raw data, on your files. If you provide the right metadata using good semantic models, it will be easier for applications to consume and produce the metadata. So your metadata will be more valuable and of higher quality, and so it's easier and better to reuse.
Okay, but you already said you have your applications can then easier use your metadata, but what if people have a lot of applications already with their own lists of metadata? How would they handle that?
So yeah, that's a common question that when we start a project as a customer, they say, well, we do all this already, so we have this database with all our codes here, and by the way, in other applications, we also have these codes, and you know that the other application over there and the other department, they copied these codes also some years ago, and they're also extending that. And this is what we see, that codes are maintained in different silos at the moment, and that is exactly the problem that you're facing if you don't define your metadata on an enterprise level, or you don't harmonize, let's say, the essential metadata attributes and things. So basically what I want to say is that do what you do and do what you have done with your code list and so on. Simply do it based on accepted W3C standards. Do it with the right methodology and use this semantic spectrum to see really where you need to be with a certain type of vocabulary. So, for example, for countries, if you really just need countries, a code list might be enough. But if you want to, for example, define regions on the Earth for marketing and for regulatory and all these different things, and you have different types of regions, maybe you need an ontology. So it's really the business questions that define what type of model you want to use. And an important point is also that you use state-of-the-art technology. So as I've shown, the different triple stores are important. Select the right one for the right purpose and not define your own database schema to express things that are basically standardized already. And so you can enhance the quality and the value if you have an enterprise strategy for using semantic technologies for the metadata in your company.
Okay. Clear. Eric, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think that the key here is on your second question about I have lots of different kinds of metadata. The real takeaway here is to just make all of your implicit data in your organization explicit. And what I mean by this is that you can have a lot of different kinds of metadata in your organization, and you will. So different groups will create their own languages and their own terminologies and their own kinds of metadata and probably their own data models around the same raw data. And so a lot of people will often ask us, well, how do we get over that? Because you know, I can't make everyone give up their data model and go to one common data model. The answer is you don't have to do that. So semantics is not about making everyone use the exact same term for the exact same thing. Semantics is about, tell me about the term you want to use. What do you mean by that term? Does it really refer to the same class of entity, or do you mean something slightly different by it? And if you mean something slightly different by it, then let's capture that difference and perhaps use a different term. Or if you really mean the exact same thing as someone else, then we will simply take those two terms and make them a synonym. And so in this way, now you can have people who actually can use their own types of metadata and their own terms for things, but you've just explicitly stated what they mean by it. So you remove a lot of the vagueness that we see across a lot of these organizations. So sometimes you have the same terms for different things when they should be segmented out in the semantic model. And sometimes you have different terms that actually refer to the same thing, which means you can make them synonyms on the labeling. And when you query using any of those terms, you'll still find the right information.
Okay, Eric, maybe this also leads into another question we have from the audience, and that's actually if we have the semantic data, a semantic model, and the raw data, how do you ensure that they are alive and maintain the life cycle?
So that's an interesting question. So semantics has to link to your raw data, and this is a topic that we often refer to as model drift in one area. In other words, over time, your data model may no longer align perfectly with your raw data. This is hard to do inside of semantics itself, other than having someone eyeball your data and eyeball your semantic model. We tend to use a data science kind of approach here with our semantics, and it's possible to actually build heuristics using these kinds of complex pattern recognition algorithms that will look at the graph isomorphism problem. In other words, it will look at the entities and the relationships in the graph and determine, are these still the same things that we thought they were before? Has something changed? Is the data alignment no longer fitting very well? That's one way to do it in a sort of a trained computational way. Another way, though, that a lot of times pops up is people simply start to notice that a definition is incomplete, so they'd like to change it, or they'll say, well, now we have a new kind of data and it needs to go somewhere, so it needs to be subclassed under something else. Or as I'm searching for data, I'm not really getting the expected search results that I would like, or I found this other information and it wouldn't come back through this search result. So a lot of times, just when users are using the system, they'll find certain items that they would like changed, or they'll find certain deficiencies in the models. And really, this is why you need to have your subject matter experts using the system. So oftentimes, when this happens in the relational world, it's very difficult to fix. In the semantic world, it's very easy to fix. So you can re-subclass something. You can take a class and put it under another class, and it will just inherit the properties of the classes above it. Doing this, however, requires that you have a good governance structure in place and good data stewardship, because you don't want people going in and changing your models willy-nilly all over the place, or they can become a big mess after a while. So the basic answer is that you can rely on your user groups to tell you things that they're seeing that they would like to change, and give certain powers to certain people to change those items and maintain them and monitor them over time. And then there are other ways to use automated kinds of tools to help with this kind of model drift problem.
And maybe I add something also to this. If there's time left. So a technical aspect that one can consider here is that if your reference data, for example, a code would go under significant change, you technically create a new code for this, and you say, okay, the previous code is deprecated, it's never deleted, so it will be always available for the existing data that was tagged with this term, but you draw a replaced by or a certain semantic relationship that shows, okay, this is now the term that is to be used. So you have a common set of lifecycle attributes, for example, that you say this term is in a draft status, or it's actively used, or it's now inactive, or deprecated, so that people can still look up what did that mean some time ago when I tagged my data, or what is now the term to use to refer to a similar thing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one short question, so this is the question we're going to end with. So Eric, you spoke a lot about the use cases. So if one of our attendees would like to start, where should they start? What is the easiest place to start considering semantics?
So normally I ask people more of a management consulting kind of question. So in other words, what are some of the main problems you have with your data? And there are a list of topics that can tell you that semantics would be good for helping this type of problem. And one of these examples would be we have a lot of information in people's heads that is not necessarily in our organization. So you have someone who's very good at reading a database or a set of databases, but very few people outside of this one specific person or maybe this group can get at that data. Other areas are things like I would really like to be able to have a single point where I could query lots of different types of data right from my machine or right from my laptop without having to go to different groups and ask them to do these queries and then pull back results, and then now I have to check that they're accurate, and then I have to compile them with other answers and so on. Or perhaps I have reporting that requires a large kind of integration on the data. These kinds of problems, right, when it's about naming things, when it's about understanding patterns or trends, when it's about querying across lots of data sources, when it's about getting information out of people's heads and as part of your corporate IP, these kinds of areas are really good indicators that a semantic system would help you. If it's something more like around just a basic data cleansing, or if it's something much more straightforward that you could do easier, cheaper, faster with a database, then that's probably the solution you should go with for that type of application. So I would say out of the kinds of areas we see, a lot of people in the R&D space are about integrating their data and making more sense out of it. A lot of people in manufacturing would like to have the data more integrated between parts of the machine lines, or would like to see better reports, trends, and analytics come out of that type of data. And people in regulatory simply often don't have the bandwidth or the manpower to manually look at all of these documents and make all of these kinds of decisions using spreadsheets or whatever. So if these kinds of overload problems or questions are something that you have, that's where we normally like to start. And what I would also tell everyone is that we like to start with proofs of concept. So the key is, don't start with the most extravagant problem you can come up with in your organization. Start with something that's difficult, hard to do with another kind of technology, but something that you can at least demonstrate some first steps or some good success that this technology would bear some fruit. And we normally like to do this in a small engagement. It's, a couple of weeks to a couple of months. It's fairly inexpensive, and it will give you a sense of, will this work for you? Is this something that's doable? And how easily could you expand it across your organization to larger problems?
Okay, Eric, thank you very much. So this is all we have time for today, and I want to thank Eric and Heiner and everybody who joined us in this webinar. As I said, and also in the comment section, this webinar was recorded. We will make that recording available through our social media. We will also provide you with the slides for those of you who requested that. So thank you for attending, and have a good day, have a good evening.